Rex Heuermann, the meticulous architectural consultant who the authorities say murdered 3 women and buried them on a Long Island beach more than a decade ago, may have been among the last of the dying breed of American serial killers. Even as serial killers came to inhabit a central place in the nation's imagination, inspiring hit movies, television shows, books, podcasts, and more, their actual number was dwindling dramatically. There were once hundreds at large, and a spike in the 70s and 80s terrified the country. Now, only a handful at most are known to be active, according to researchers. The techniques that led to the arrest of Mr. Heuermann, who has pleaded not guilty to the crimes, help explain the waning of serial killing, which the FBI defines as the same person killing 2 or more victims in separate events at different times. It's harder to hide. Rapid advances in investigative technology, video, and other digital surveillance tools, as well as the ability to analyze mountains of information, quickly allow the authorities to find killers who before would have gone undetected. At the same time, Americans have adopted more cautious habits in their everyday life. Hitchhiking, for example, is less common, and children are driven to and from school. That reduces easy targets. And some theorize those bent on killing now opt for the spectacular mass murders. The perfect crime concept is more of a concept than it ever has been before, said Adam Scott Want, an assistant professor at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. More than a decade ago, prosecutors said Mr. Heuermann tried to cover his digital tracks by communicating with victims using so-called burner phones, which are prepaid units purchased anonymously for temporary use. But thanks to exponential progress in technology since 2010, investigators were able to not only chart Mr. Heuermann's decade-old movements, they could also monitor exactly what he was searching online in recent months. They saw that he was using an anonymous account for internet inquiries like, why could law enforcement not trace the calls made by the Long Island serial killer? Prosecutors said. He'd also been visiting massage parlors and contacting women as escorts. The ubiquity of technology has made it harder to get away with murder, Mr. Want said. The amount of data people create in their daily lives is more than many can conceptualize, he said. Just by walking outside, people are now tracked by ever-present cameras, from Amazon's Ring units outside homes to surveillance at banks and retail stores, he said. Every use of a phone or computer creates streams of data that are collected directly on devices or immortalized on servers, he said. A concerted effort by the federal government to ensure that even the smallest police departments can use technology to their benefits has also helped investigators have an upper hand. In 1987, there were 198 known active serial killers, people connected to at least 2 murders, and 404 known victims across the United States, according to a report published 3 years ago by researchers at Radford University and Florida Gulf Coast University Serial Killer Database. By 2018, there were only 12 known serial killers and 44 victims. The big question is, are they going underground and finding other techniques, according to Terrence Leary, an associate professor in the psychology department at Florida Gulf Coast University? He said that some serial murders have killed for discrete periods before taking prolonged breaks. He said maybe they decided to give up. Who knows? As the American way of killing has changed, experts are continuing to refine who should be classified as a serial killer and who a spree killer or a mass shooter is. They make distinctions among grim data points like the number of victims and the lag between murders. Spree killings and mass murders occur when someone kills several people in a brief period or a single episode. While several serial killings can span several years, serial killers' motives are often deeply seated in the psyche, sex, anger, and a desire for control. While mass shootings have increased, many committed by teenagers, serial killings have apparently diminished, but both being committed by criminal psychopaths, according to Mr. Leary. Some people who might once have become serial killers might instead choose a single fatal gesture. Both categories of people display antisocial personality disorder, he said, meaning that they manipulate and violate people without guilt. He said it's very possible that a shift is taking place. The two practices also reflect respective eras. Mass killings today have taken to live streaming massacres and leaving behind manifestos. Serial killers, on the other hand, flourished in an age before social media, operating clandestinely in many cases. The serial killer who buried his victims near Gilgo Beach was careful to try to hide his crimes. He bound his victims with tape or belts and wrapped them in shrouds of camouflage patterned burlap. In all, 11 bodies have been found since 2011 on the stretch of the South Shore that include Gilgo Beach. In addition to the 3 deaths in which he's charged, Mr. Heuermann, 59, is the prime suspect in a 4th, and the investigation continues. On Friday, the authorities said that they had identified one set of remains, a skull found near Tobay Beach in 2011. And after Mr. Heuermann's arrest last month in New York, police departments across the country began trying to link him to the disappearance and murders in their jurisdictions. The police in New Jersey and in Las Vegas and in South Carolina, where Mr. Heuermann owns property, looked into whether he could be linked to the cold cases there, according to a statement from the Suffolk County Police Department. Investigators in Rock Hill, South Carolina, looked into possible links into the 2014 disappearance of an 18-year-old, according to Lieutenant Michael Chavez of the Rock Hill Police Department. In New Jersey, investigators revealed the killings of 4 women whose bodies were discovered in 2006, lying face down in several inches of water and spread several feet apart behind a strip of motels in the Egg Harbor Township. So far, those efforts have not led to charges, but the cases remain open. Among 256,000 unsolved homicides in the United States since 1980, according to the Murder Accountability Project, which is a nonprofit organization. While serial killers' additions to that grim toll have become scant, documentaries, podcasts, and shows examine their lives, and they show how crimes have boomed. And the internet has created virtual communities across the nation who trade sometimes fantastical stories about real-life crimes. When Mr. Heuermann was arrested in July, crowds flocked to his home, a low-red, dilapidated, tucked house into a quiet block of Massapequa Park. They were lured by the chance to get a first-hand peek into what investigators say was a secret existence. But if the experts are correct, such opportunities to gawk will become increasingly rare. The Murder Accountability Project exists because they say America does a poor job at tracking and accounting for unsolved homicides. For example, the statistic I read on the show the other day said that 40% of homicides in Las Vegas go unsolved. Every year, at least 5,000 killers get away with murder. The rate at which police clear homicides through arrest has declined over the years until today, nearly a half go unsolved. So as a result, more than 256,000 Americans have perished in unsolved homicides that have been committed since 1980, more than the combined death toll of all United States military action since World War II. In fact, the total U.S. military fatalities during the 8-year invasion and occupation of Iraq were less than a single year of civilian losses from unsolved domestic homicides. This project will also spotlight those communities who failed to report important information to the FBI's Uniform Crime Report and Supplementary Homicide Report. It's a very interesting website. There's a lot of things that you can go and look at, including analytics and charts and police trends and data and docs and search cases and look at clearance rates. I put a link to this in the description.